in relation to one of the issues. The examination is not about Mr. Rainbird, it's about the board and the agreements received from the various departments. So if you just bear in that mind when you're asking your questions. I call on Deputy Shane Ross.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'd like to thank you for coming in today. If I could just start off with the Chairperson. Could you just tell us why the accounts, what's the problem with the accounts 2011, 2012?
Sorry.
The accounts haven't been published for 2011, 2012. They've been audited, isn't that right?
They have been audited, yes.
I thought the Internal Auditor General said they weren't.
Oh. The audit review isn't complete. The
okay.
Audit work has been carried out in the gallery, both for 2011 and 2012.
So the audit.
There are a number of accounting issues that we're still considering and will be coming back to the gallery on.
Okay, so they haven't. That work isn't completed yet.
It's not completed. No.
When will it be completed?
Well, as I said, I am expecting the files on both accounts to come to me in the next number of weeks. I understand that there is a meeting required between my staff and the gallery, and when the results of that are available, the file will be sent to me for review.
But there are issues there still outstanding.
Accounting issues, yeah. There was a very fundamental change in the format of the accounts, and there are some accounting issues that we still have to resolve. Now, I think the accounts in the format that they are at the moment, they are substantially improved, and the gallery has done a lot of work in that regard. But there are still a number of items to be teased out.
Is that unusual? Is that unusual for
well, to have that extent of a reformatting of accounts is certainly unusual, yeah.
Okay, but and it's happened 2 years in a row.
Well, I suppose the 2011 has to be completed before 2012 can be completed.
All right. Could you tell us something about the selection of the director in terms of the interview panel? How many were on the interview panel?
I think 5. There was an independent chair, a member, assistant secretary of the Department of Arts, and myself as the chair of the board, and 2 board members.
Who was the independent chair?
I've forgotten her name. She was appointed by the public appointments.
Okay, and who are the other 2 board members?
The other 2, Tom McCarthy and James Handley.
Okay. Okay, and you had an initial process, and what happened? You found that there was nobody suitable. Is that right?
Yes. We had a very long process, as I've explained. Took about 1.5 years. It was an international search, and I have to say the salary offered was a problem for people coming from abroad. However, we were very happy with 2 people that we had on our list, and the board approved those. The first candidate did in fact change her mind when she considered the difficulty of moving to Ireland and the salary being paid. We were very happy to move to the second candidate, and who absolutely suited what we needed.
That's the director that you have now. Okay. Could you take us through the procedure whereby this 40,000 payment was agreed? How did that come up?
Well, the first thing we thought about was that a candidate coming from abroad should not in any way suffer because of having to travel to Ireland, and in the case where they were not relocating their family and children to Ireland, it was fair, we believed, and important that they visit their family as often as they could, possibly every weekend. And we wanted to ensure that they did not suffer because of that. If a candidate was in Ireland, they would have been living in Ireland, they would be better off. So that was the first thought of the gallery. And we wanted to enable the director to travel to visit his family every weekend, if possible.
Where's he go?
In the UK.
London? Is it
Yes.
London or where?
London.
And how did you come up with the 40,000 figure then?
We came up with €200 per round trip, 40 trips a year, and it is a fixed term contract of 5 years.
I mean, 200 euro round trip's quite a lot, especially if you're booking in advance.
I think it's a very fair trip for 2 days if it's a weekend.
But you're only paying for the air trip, are you, or what are you paying for?
Air trip, I presume bus fares and transport to and from the airport, and the other side. I certainly wouldn't make a round trip to London for €200.
But you probably don't fly in Ryanair, do you? I've just looked at on the website this morning, and booking in advance, you'd certainly do it for a lot less than 100 each way. A lot less, and sometimes for less than half that.
Yeah,
you know.
well, we considered it fair, that 200, that was our determination, 200 per round trip. We thought that was fair, and it is vouched. And we have a process in place for vouching that.
Why did you pay it up front? You get a cheque for 40,000, did you?
More or less. I think we did it for ease of administration, quite frankly. We had already determined that that is what it would cost. And we decided that it was better to do it that way, that it would be clear to us when accepting other expenses for other travel, concern of work. And yes, and of course we have a clawback position that if the director left before the 5 years for any reason, we would get the remaining money back.
And if he doesn't use the money for that purpose,
Well,
is there a clawback for that?
sorry. Yeah. Well, if he overspends, he certainly won't get any more. That is a once-off payment.
What happens if he underspends it?
Well, we don't expect he will.
No, but this is a serious
happens?
question. What happens if he underspends it?
Sorry. Well, we won't seek to recover it.
You won't seek to recover it?
No.
So he could go home, he could only go home once? Sorry.
Mr. Darcy, you can feel free to
Speak.
answer the questions if you wish.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, in other words, it's cash into his hand if he doesn't spend it. If he doesn't spend it on air tickets.
Well,
You won't seek to recover it.
we do expect him to visit his family. It is fair that somebody be allowed to do that. I think every deputy in the House visits their family regularly and are allowed to do that. And this is the same case.
Yeah, well, but the point I'm trying to make is this. I'm not disputing the fact of him travelling backwards and forwards at all for a moment. I think it's overgenerous what you're doing. But we might come back to that. But the point I'm trying to make is this, that if he doesn't have to give the money back that he doesn't spend on travel, that is extra salary to him.
I don't agree with you.
What is it
there,
now?
because we do expect that he will travel over and back. We trust that he will, and we will have vouched expenses.
You're not going to look for the money back.
Well, that is not in our plan at the moment. If, for example, we heard he never travelled, I think we might consider talking with him.
What's the point in having vouched expenses if the vouching has actually no effect whatsoever because the money's cash?
Yes, well, we did consider that, seeing that we had already agreed that we would allow this sum for travel to visit his family.
It's a top-up, though, in effect. This is a top-up.
No, it is funds for visiting the family at the weekend.
And keep the change.
Well, I don't expect there will be change out of that. We took a lot of advice on this, and this was the simplest way to ensure that a candidate from abroad, which we very much welcomed having somebody of his calibre, that a candidate abroad would not be any worse off than a candidate who got the job in Ireland.
Okay. How's it working in practice now, up to now? This has been going on for a year and a half. How's it working?
At the end of this year, we will be, accounting for that. And it's working very well. And we're very fortunate to have somebody who is willing to make those trips over and back to visit the family, and at the same time carry out a very important job for the people of Ireland.
And no, I agree with you about that. I'm sure he's very qualified, well qualified, and a very good choice.
Yes.
I have no doubt about that at all. But I am interested, as Public Accounts Committee, is how this arrangement is working. You've had 18 months to look at it. How is it working? All we know is that over those 18 months, approximately, 15,000 of that should have been vouched by now. You've got 3,700 that we know of.
Well, that was for 2012, first months of that.
Yeah, okay.
And it's very important for us to have a system in place to account for it, and we do have that, and it will be accounted for at the end of the year.
Okay, could Mr. Rainbow just tell us, is he basically keeping to the once a week amounts? Would he be able to give us a rough idea whether it's working for him in this system in its original terms?
I'm happy to confirm to the committee that I'm visiting my family regularly, probably more like 45, 50 times a year rather than 40 times as anticipated, as estimated. Sometimes there need to be last-minute changes. Late bookings on flights make the costs higher. Other times I'm able to book them a little in advance. There are obviously substantial costs in getting to and from airports, so it's roughly working out.
Is it, and will you be able to return anything if it's under the amount? The state.
I'm very sure that I'll be abiding by the terms of my agreement with the board.
And is that in the agreement? That anything not spent is returned?
I think the chair has already answered that question with respect.
And then the answer is that it's not. That means that the money will not be returned. I take it that to mean money will not be returned if there is an underspend.
And can I say, no, we will not be paying more if he is spending more money. And who knows if the cost of airfares go up in the years to come. There's still 4 years of the contract to run. And we have no agreement to pay more if the expenses are more.
That's fine. Okay. My interpretation of this is that this is a top-up. I'm afraid, from what you've said. I don't know how much, but there is scope there for a top-up. And that is my interpretation of it. It may not happen, or it may happen. But if you're not going to look to get back what's not spent on the FS, then it's a top-up. The next thing I'd like to ask you about this, yeah, the amount you paid over was 40,000. You gave them a cheque for 40,000. Is that what happened?
Yes.
Okay. And that was a tax-free payment for relocation. It was under a relocation heading, which is what the Controller and Auditor General has already found not to be the case. The amount was then raised to about 87,000, I think, later on. Could you give us the chronology of that? What happened there?
We decided to pay, we got advice, and we decided to pay the tax up front on it and to claim back from the revenue if there was tax to be claimed back. We needn't have done that, but we thought it was the cleanest way to do it.
You needn't have done it.
No, we needn't have paid the tax up front, but the advice was that it was the way to do it, and we did that.
And when did you paid him 40,000. When did you pay him the 40,000?
I don't know, I'll ask.
In July of last year.
And when did you get the tax advice?
got the tax advice at the same time.
At the same date?
Well, in around the same time, and as the employer or as the payer, we were obliged to discharge whatever income tax obligations we would have in relation to that. We took advice in relation to the entire scheme and the expenses that we would be allowed to deduct from that, and we grossed up the net payment and paid over to the revenue the amount due in income tax.
So it was an income tax payment.
It's an income tax payment, yes.
So his income for the year, according to the revenue, was double that year.
No, not his income.
Well, if it's an income tax, then he has. Then it is his income.
Tax, but all we were doing was discharging our obligations. There are plenty of expenses that may or may not be allowable for tax or may be tax exempt. And in relation to this particular type of expense, we were advised that it was not allowable for tax, or that the tax had to be accounted for in relation to this payment, and on that basis we discharged our responsibilities.
In other words, but the revenue then has adjudged its income. It's income tax. You said it was income tax.
This is a reimbursement. This is an estimate of the reimbursement of expenses which the director has to pay because he has decided that he's not in a position to relocate to Ireland, and his permanent private residence is in the UK. And on that basis, the board decided that it did not want to discriminate in any way against a person from abroad taking up a position as compared with an Irish resident.
Yeah, I know all that. That's what under what category is this? You grossed it up, as you say, right? You gave him 40,000. You gave him a cheque 40,000, and then simultaneously you went to the revenue commissioners, or did you go to an accountant?
We went to a firm of accountants to get legal advice.
Who's that?
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to mention a particular firm of accountants. They're not a major firm of accountants, but they're what I would regard as a mid-size.
Who are they? Can you tell us who they are?
I think it's a privilege, isn't it, Chair?
Which accountants you're using?
Well, for this particular...
I don't see why it should be.
I think you can give the name. Mr. Harrison. I think you can give the name.
Baker Tilly.
Okay, Baker Tilly. Okay, and they advised you what about this 40,000 payment? They advised you there was tax due.
Approximately 3,500 of expenses, which were included in the total figure of 40,000, did not attract income tax. But the reimbursement of expenses from the director's permanent private residence to his place of work in Ireland is not in principle allowable for tax, and we cannot pay it, we cannot reimburse it without discharging the income, without in effect paying the income tax on that amount.
It's judged by the revenue's income.
No.
Well, if it's income tax on it.
It's judged by the revenue as being not allowable as a reimbursement of expenses which were incurred.
Well, I would disagree with you. I would say they're judging it to be income. That's why they're levying the tax. That's why you're paying the tax. If it's not income, you wouldn't have to pay the tax. If it was a legitimate expense, you wouldn't have to pay any tax on it.
I'm sorry, is that...
If it's a legitimate expense, an allowable expense, you wouldn't have to pay any tax on it.
Allowable for tax purposes, but
correct.
There are plenty of expenses that are not allowable for tax purposes.
Correct. That's why you're paying the tax on it. Anyway, it looks to me as if this is undoubtedly a top-up payment under another guise. And whether that's right or wrong, I think it's probably better to be upfront about it.
May I
yes, certainly. Yeah.
Make an observation. In Circular 6 of 1989, which is a circular on removal expenses, there is reference to the particular arrangement that we have come to with the director in that, which talks about circumstances where the individual in question does not is not, for whatever reason, able to relocate his family to his place of work, and in those circumstances it allows albeit under certain restrictions, but it allows in principle the reimbursement of expenses incurred for weekly trips that are in order for the incumbent to return to his family. So it's not as if this has been picked out of the air. There is scope for that made or referenced in that particular circular. So, and that is another reason why the board views the fact that that these expenses are not, well, they're certainly not top-up income, and there is provision for them in that particular circular.
Okay, thank you. Could you tell me? Okay, that's absolutely fine. Could you tell me this money is coming out of? This money is coming out of what you call your non-exchequer income. Is that right?
Yes.
How do you divide your non-exchequer and your exchequer income?
It is divided in restricted and unrestricted funds. We get funds from benefactors that are restricted in they advise us to spend them for the buying of art or whatever is their decision. And the unrestricted funds are spent for the benefit of the gallery. And the Board of Governors and Guardians has control over those funds.
In all time, you're acting basically on behalf of the Irish people and the taxpayer in what you're doing, whether it's restricted or unrestricted funds.
Yes, except we have the authority as the board to spend them.
And what do you spend unrestricted funds on? Are they the stuff? Are they the income you get from the cafe, the shops, and all that? Is that what it is?
No, some of it perhaps, but the majority of it is from royalties. It's, for example,
Bernard Shaw.
Bernard Shaw.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure Bernard Shaw wouldn't like to think he's paying for air flights across from Britain to Ireland.
I think Bernard Shaw would be very happy to pay for the director of the gallery, who's an exceptional person, to return to visit his family.
But those you have basically the same duty of care to each fund.
Yes, and they are audited.
Okay, that's fine.
In the same way.
Okay. Could I, Chairman, is it in order for me to ask a few slightly unrelated questions, or should I leave them to later?
Well, you can ask.
Okay. Can I?
To what extent would be my worry?
Okay. No. They'll be very short. All right. They'll be very short indeed. I wonder, could you help me about the collection? You are the guardians and the owners and the trustees of that. Is there pressure from the department to take possession of those themselves? Is there any pressure from the department to take ownership for the state?
Well, first of all, as chair, I say there is no pressure to take any of our art from the department.
But there's no pressure to take ownership of the assets of any sort at all?
Of course not.
No.
And we certainly wouldn't agree to any of that.
Okay, that's fine. And the final question is this one. Two more. Sorry, Chairman. Just two very brief ones. Is there any question of charging people to go into the gallery? I think you're in a very small minority now of galleries around Europe about charging people to go in and see the paintings. Is there any question of that?
Well, the board certainly would not agree to that. The board as it stands now, so there's no question at this time. Occasionally, in the past, when there was a particular exhibition that was very, very costly, there was a small sum to view that particular exhibition. But in general, you know, we're a very highly visited gallery, and it's very important that our paintings are available for view for the people of Ireland, and that is what is requested by our benefactors who gave us paintings.
Okay, and finally, the gallery, a lot of the gallery presumably is closed now for refurbishment, is that right?
That's correct.
Is there any of it going on tour? Any of the exhibitions going on tour? Any of the paintings going on tour?
Yes, I'll let the director answer that.
Very likely the Evans of Eton exhibition we've just closed at the gallery will be going out west to Galway. The Chester Beatty group, which was recently 36 paintings on show at Dublin Castle in the Chester Beatty Library, is going to Limerick to take its part in the City of Culture celebrations next year. We've got a very lively temporary loan programme where individual works are sent across the world, in fact, to well-conceived exhibitions by partner museums. So yes, we have a very good exchange of works with other institutions, whether a whole exhibition going from our collection or individual works going to other exhibitions in other venues.
Okay. That's me finished, Chairman. I just asked the Chairman if they would consider, please, insisting, because this is not kind of acceptable, that if money is given for a specific purpose to one of its employees, that it is used for that purpose, and that if it is not used for that purpose, that the gallery should claw back the money. And I'm referring to the 40,000 that you've given, and that if that is not used for the purpose for which you have given it, that it should then be reclaimed for the benefit of the gallery. Is that a reasonable thing to ask?
Well, I think at the end of 5 years, that certainly can be looked at.
No, current, every year, annually. Not to the end of 5 years, annually.
Well, it runs for the full term.
I know,
Yeah.
but you're getting an internal audit done every year, aren't you?
We do, yeah.
So could you not please ask the board that if any money in this particular case is not used for the purposes for which it was intended, that the board should claw it back?
Well, I certainly will mention your comments to the board at the next board meeting.
Otherwise, it would be a top-up of income.
Yes, and it is not that.
Well, then I assume you're going to get it back if it arises. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Ross, Deputy Connaughton.